I'm just going to say it. I'm going to say it. This is the most revolutionary camera I've used to date. Hey, how's it going everyone? My name is Joe Allam and welcome back to Japan. Today, we're going to be talking about my thoughts on the DJI Osmo Pocket and some footage that I've taken on this over the last 5 weeks since I've been in Japan, including some footage from when I went skiing as part of a Japan rail trip. So I've been producing a whole series of content about that. That's going to be coming soon. It's quite a extensive piece of work. I'm a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of footage we got over the 21 days, but I guarantee you it should be a great series. So keep your eyes peeled for that and make sure you do subscribe to the channel to catch those. Now I should also point out this video here is currently being filmed with the Panasonic Lumix GH5S. They are a sponsor of the channel currently and they've loaned this camera to me. So this little camera has been a complete game changer to me and it has actually been an incredible addition to my camera bag, or rather my pocket. It's actually one of the only cameras that includes the word pocket and is genuinely pocketable. Now DJI, they're kind of the monopoly holders of stabilized equipment. I don't think there's any company that comes close to producing gear as good as they do. So essentially this is a small handheld gimbal camera and you just plug it straight into your smartphone. So I've got an iPhone 10 here. Comes with adapters for either iOS or USB-C. And then from here it extends into this whole sort of rig-based setup. All right, so let's run through my pros and cons of this camera, starting of course with the positives. So the ergonomics, they really do challenge what a camera could be. I don't think I've bought or even seen a camera in the last 5-10 years that has radically changed how you would actually use a camera than this has. It really is a challenging look into how you use it. I mean, it's kind of like holding a packet of chewing gum with the camera on top. It's just so different and I love that. I love this idea of thinking like, how can we change the user experience of a camera and how do we pack it with as much functionality in a simple situation as possible? And let me point out, this feels very well made. Every person that I've handed this to is, you know, who's been intrigued by it, they've all kind of held it and thought like, oh yeah, that actually feels really solid. That feels good. It's very easy to use. It's only got a couple of buttons on the front and then a very small touch screen. Now the picture on this in video goes up to 4K 60 frames a second. I've generally spent most of my time filming in 4K 25 frames a second rather than 50 because I shoot in PAL rather than NTSC. And the 4K picture on here is incredibly sharp. It is very, very sharp. I've been thoroughly impressed with that. Mostly I'm using it just on its own. I don't actually connect my smartphone into it. I just use it like this. But when I review the footage back later or I plug in my smartphone, every single time I've said, oh, isn't that sharp? Like that is a sharp picture. Now the biggest concern I had with the Osmo Pocket before I bought it was the audio quality. And I saw the sample footage from people who had these as pre-release and the audio was pretty bad. I was kind of, you know, I wasn't very impressed with it at all. Then they released a firmware update, I think the day it launched or the day before it actually went publicly available. And it was significantly better. The version that I bought came with that software update already. And let me tell you, the audio has been very good. Somewhat busy environment. How does this sound? Right. Hey there everyone, welcome to Japan. It's another installment on the Jelly Journeys vlog and we're going to be here for a long time. So we've been in Japan for about a week now and the first photo that I've actually like composed and thought about and actually taken has just been of Ellie hugging a vending machine. You know, you can just kind of point it like this and it works incredibly well. The only downside would be, as with all microphones, if you're using it in windy environments, it doesn't work as well. I'm just going to test with the wind blowing in towards my face. It's audible on my ears. Can you hear this? You can always get around that by using external audio from something like a Zoom H1, or DJI have released a small audio adapter you can plug into the USB port on the bottom, and then you could plug in a lav mic or something, but it's a little bit cumbersome because you're going to have cables plugged in, or you're just going to have weird sort of microphones kind of attached to it. The ergonomics of that maybe don't work that well, but on its own, The video quality is great. The audio is definitely usable. In fact, I've been using this to film some vlogs on our second channel, on the Jelly Journeys YouTube channel, and those should be edited and published in maybe a few weeks or so. But I have been using this extensively for that channel. So make sure you do go and subscribe to that channel and you can see that when they go live. Now, what is possibly my favorite feature of this is how it can be used independent of the smartphone. So yes, you can plug your phone into it, but you can also remove it at any time. And the reason I love that is because it means that when you're filming things, it goes onto this. The footage doesn't go onto your smartphone. It goes into a memory card here. And the reason that's great is it then fits into my workflow with other cameras. So I can literally take this memory card out and I can put it into my workflow of importing my footage and doing everything. I don't have to navigate my phone's camera app or anything like that. It's all in my standard workflow. So the gimbal on here has multiple different modes. So you have the first person video mode, you have the fixed tilt, and then you have the follow modes. Now I've generally been using the first person video mode for most of the time. And the reason that's great is because it just kind of points the camera whichever way you point it. There's no sort of like fixed control or any sort of idea of what the gimbal wants you to do. It just goes the way that you want it to go. For me, the type of use that I'm doing with this, I'm literally pointing it in directions and filming certain things and just letting the gimbal remove those sort of shakiness and jitters about and stuff. When you have it in a fixed mode, sometimes you can point it and all that will happen is the camera will just pan to continue to point where it was originally pointed. It includes its own sort of intelligence there. Other than that, the tracking mode is probably my second most used mode. Now I can just hold it out here and it will continue to track my face. So even if I spin this around, the camera will continue to follow my face. And that works incredibly well for vlogging because I kind of don't really need to pay attention too much to where I'm pointing the camera. It kind of makes me a bit lazy in that sense. The best scenario I've had when I was using this was when I went skiing. And of course, when I'm skiing, I'm concentrating on going down the hill and making sure I don't break my legs. So being able to just hold this at a distance and know that it's capturing my face, capturing it level and steady and smooth, it makes you concentrate on what's most important at hand. And that is getting down that mountain safe and sound. Now, of course, you can plug this into your smartphone. You can choose tracking modes and you can have it follow, and it does follow very well. The angle of sort of view from that, I believe is, it's like 270 degrees, I think. It doesn't spin a full 360, but it does cover a wide range. You can sort of run around and it will still continue to follow you. Now, as usual, as comparison to all other DJI apps, it is very stable and it kind of covers everything you need in an easy to use interface. It's well designed, it's just crafted kind of professionally, unlike other apps from camera manufacturers that are sort of a bit of an afterthought. The DJI one is quite obviously the center attention. Now there are some extra features within that, and that would be the time-lapse functionality and the ability to set tracking points across other things. Now I previously used it on the Osmo Mobile, which was the smartphone gimbal, and it worked very well, but it doesn't really fit into the type of filming that I'm doing. I've kind of tested it a little bit, but it's not something I've actually used for the videos that I'm producing. Now, just going back to when I was skiing, I definitely found myself reaching for the Osmo Pocket far more than I did my GoPro Hero 6. Kind of for the ergonomics, because I like to hold it, you know, so I can point it at myself, but also point it down the mountain. Whereas the GoPro is kind of a little bit wristy, if that makes sense. This I can just kind of hold very stable. But also just the picture that came out of it. When comparing between the GoPro and the Osmo, I just enjoyed the picture on the Osmo so much more. I really found myself reaching more and more for the Osmo, especially after I reviewed my footage. In fact, on the very last day, I didn't even bring my GoPro with me because I just preferred this and it could handle it better. Even in minus 12 degrees, it was working out perfectly. All right, so now let's look at some of the cons with this camera and some of the things that I think could be improved, or rather I'd like to see improved, either in this version via a firmware update or in future versions or new models that they may release. Now, the main disappointment I do have with this camera is there is a lack of joystick control on the actual bottom area. I was kind of disappointed that they didn't include it like they have in the Osmo Mobile and all of their other gimbals. They have this joystick control so you can easily move the gimbal. Now you can move it on the screen, but given the size of the small screen, it's kind of a little bit fiddly to do. You can at least grab like physically grab the camera and adjust its tilt axis, but I would have loved to have seen a joystick at the bottom. Even if it made the camera ever so slightly bigger, it would still be pocketable. It's also fairly disappointing that DJI announced some accessories at launch, but didn't have them available at launch at some kind of a little bit unreasonable pricing, I'd say. Most of that doesn't matter too much because there will be third-party versions of some things. But like I said, with the lack of the joystick, one of the accessories they do have is like a little thumb wheel that you can control everything, which is fairly pricey, but a big disadvantage to using that thumb wheel is you then lose the ability to connect your smartphone because it uses that same connector. So although it's adding to the camera, it's also removing features, which isn't really the best scenario, if I'm honest. Now, I know I said the audio quality is fairly usable on here. It is a shame that there's no built-in audio input on here. Now, DJI actually make their own microphone, and I have one that I use in my GH5 as a kind of my reverse audio, and that's this. This is the DJI Osmo Mic. So it's originally designed for their original Osmo, which is a much bigger gimbal and sort of a circular camera. It would be great, you know, if there was just a jack on the side or the front or just somewhere that I could plug this omnidirectional mic in and just have the ability for even better audio at a sacrifice of having this kind of funny little thing sticking out. Unfortunately, what they've done is they've released an adapter that plugs into USB-C, and then the mic would have to go into that. So it's just kind of like an extra two-part thing. At the sake of being a little bit bulkier, I would have happily accepted a way to plug this microphone in. Or better yet, release a USB-C mic rather than just an adapter to then plug a mic in. You know, that would solve problems as well. Another thing that could be space saving on here is that there's no tripod thread. So again, you have to get an accessory which kind of puts this camera into a little clamp or cradle, and there's the tripod thread. Now, as a designer, a way that I sort of thought about this case is, what if the case wasn't designed for the camera to go in topways, but what if the case separated sideways and the bottom part was this sort of like enclosed capsule area with a tripod thread that you could just leave the camera in, sort of like a little pocket, and then you could take it off the tripod mount or whatever, but it would double as a case that maybe slides over itself. That's just a quick idea that came to my head, you know, within like 10 seconds of thinking, where's the tripod thread? That little thing, you know, could make a difference on there. And then a final couple of points on here that have been a little bit disappointing, but at the same time, you can't really expect too much given the size of it. And that is the low light performance on here. This is an outdoor camera. It's a camera suitable for bright conditions. Low light or dark indoors just doesn't really work that well. It's still usable, but if you're going to be really pixel peeping, yeah, you're not going to have a fun time with that one. So yeah, that's just kind of one thing. But again, the physical limitations of this and the sort of negatives to it are based on just how small it is. And I'm not complaining how small it is, but at the same time, I wouldn't really complain if it was slightly bigger. And that kind of leads me on to where I think DJI are going with this in the future. It's pretty common for companies to release a first generation product that's maybe not got all of the bells and whistles that we'd hope for, as a way to, you know, just test the water on new markets, but also to make sure that the second generation sells well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see an Osmo Pocket Pro, something that maybe uses the same Hasselblad camera as we see in the Mavic 2 Pro, or maybe even a zoom version, because this is just a fixed focal length. Possibly even a larger version, somewhere in between this and the full-size Osmo. I, you know, can definitely see that coming, and I think it would be just as successful as people have been thoroughly enjoying this camera from what I've seen online and definitely from my own experiences. So yeah, that pretty much rounds out all of my thoughts on this camera. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below, especially on the picture, and if you've got one yourself, what you think about it. I think it's an exciting time for, you know, exploring the boundaries of what cameras can be. Make sure you do subscribe to the channel to catch future videos like this with other tech reviews and things, or some of the photography vlogs where I'm going around the world capturing images using equipment such as this. And if you want to see more videos on this, then let me know about that too. All right, thanks for watching everyone. Catch you later. See you soon. Bye-bye.